guest concerning county business this time? Bob?
Bob Jacobs from Talmansing Township. First, I just want to congratulate Commissioner Notstein and also Commissioner-elect Lucasavage, as well as Rocky Arner for their bid for the commissioners for 2020. I'm here today to really talk about some concerns that I have and the way things played out. As all of you know, I was also running for county commissioner, and it was an honor to do so. My concerns are the way the data was sent to the media and to those of us who are running, who are on that loop. As many know, we received information directly from the Elections Bureau multiple times at the close as some of that information is beginning to be tallied. At the end, there were several reports that were sent, and then the last one was sent on election night at 10:38 p.m. It stated specifically that it was 51 out of 51 precincts that the data was collected. So we assumed, and I think it's a good assumption to make when it's coming from the Election Bureau, that the data was complete, even though it had not been, is still unofficial, had not been certified. At that point, and I'm talking specifically about the commissioner's race, and that is that there were 14,007 total votes that came out. And the ranking was that Rocky Arner and also Mr. Notstein were close, kind of neck and neck between first and second. Then Chris Lucasavage, and then myself as fourth in the vote getters. So obviously I walked away. Disappointed personally, but it is what it is, and I needed to accept it. And then I woke up the following morning, and at 6:54, another report was issued by the Election Bureau. And that report said that there were a total votes of 24,334 votes, which is basically 10,000 more votes were received somehow between that evening and that morning. And the ranking was very different at that point, which I'm not going to go into. I was still in the fourth place at that point, but I was about 243 votes behind Rocky Arner at that point. And so my concern is less about the votes itself. I got to believe that you all know now that these are good numbers, although I still question them. I am concerned, not only as someone who ran for office, but also as a taxpayer and a voter here, a registered voter, that this information was sent out by the Election Bureau at 10:38 p.m. on election night, and the information was known to be incomplete at best. I learned yesterday from having two conversations. I had it with Commissioner Notstein, who reached out to me, and also with Commissioner O'Gorick in the afternoon to talk about this kind of situation. And both times it was said that there was a significant error, not a glitch, but a significant error that caused this. So basically human error, because two names were not on the ballots, I believe, in two municipality rates. Then it was programmed incorrectly somehow within that system, which then shut down the system, is my understanding, when these votes were then being tallied. So for me, as someone who was running, I cannot understand, quite frankly, how when the Election Bureau knew that there was a significant error that occurred, how they could release information that came across to those of us running or the media as if it was complete information. Again, still unofficial. And so I'm here today to ask the commissioners to help me to understand and help the community understand how this happens and what kinds of quality assurance activities take place. I also heard when I was talking to our commissioners, particularly with Commissioner O'Gorick, when I asked if this information was manually entered into overnight through the help of the Dominion, the company, what kinds of checks and balances were in place to say that that information was entered incorrectly. We all know after an exhausting day that errors happen. So did that tally happen more than once to determine that indeed it's 24,334 votes? And my question had to go unanswered, at least in the afternoon yesterday. So I clearly have a lot of concerns about the lack of quality assurance that continues to happen in the county, and particularly now in the Election Bureau. So I would like to see that we have full disclosure of this
Since I'm not on the election board, was not privy to the meeting, and I know all our voters in particular, not our taxpayers, but our voters definitely deserve an answer. So, not to throw Mr. Ogoric under the bus, but he is unfortunately the chair at this point in time for the election board, and I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah,
and we'll go from there.
Thank you. And let me say this. There's nobody in this room that wants to get it more accurate and right than me. I could tell you I've talked to maybe 100 already, or numerous people, including Mr. Jacobs, and I would have called each and every one of you candidates back had you reached out to me like he did for answers. I just didn't get a chance to even congratulate the winners. I want to do that now, congratulate Wayne and Chris on your victories, and anyone else who recorded a victory, and even more so I want to congratulate Bob and Tom and everyone, and Fran, and everyone who was brave enough to become a candidate, because I don't need to tell anyone that more prevalent now than ever is the fact that running for office is very difficult, very, very difficult, and it's emotional, it's taxing, it's challenging, it takes a toll on you. On that note, I was glad I was not a candidate. Be that as it may, not being a candidate, I find myself as the chairman of the election board, and I have I take that responsibility very seriously, as do my two colleagues who are appointees, and we'll be making some decisions tomorrow with regard to the election. Not to reiterate what Mr. Jacobs says, but I do feel the need to kind of just explain a little bit about what happened. So a week or two ago, we learned that the human error part of things surfaced when we learned that two candidates were left off ballots in their respective communities, those being Lower Talmensing and Mahoning Township, where substitute candidates for persons who have passed away did not make it onto the ballot. And so we did whatever we could do to get that straight, or as straight as possible, and that involved reprinting the ballots in Lower Talmensing and Mahoning Townships so that we issued the proper ballots on election day, and we did do that. At the same time, we had to bring in Dominion to reprogram the again, I'm not smart enough to know this, but I'm trying to convey technological and electronic terms and explanations that I'm really not good at. But they had to come in here and create a database that included those two candidates, so that when they were scanned, the scanners would pick up those candidates' positions on the ballot if they were voted for, as opposed to a blank oval with the write-in vote next to it. And so they called for reprogramming of the database and creating a whole new set of IDs, as they tell me, technology-wise, for the scanners to do the compilation of votes. At some point in the night, on Tuesday night, before I get into Tuesday night, what Dominion would tell us is that in each of the 51 precincts, the ballots that were scanned during the regular normal process were scanned properly, not without commotion and problem. You heard about, this Sharpies bleeding and papers bending and scanners not taking them, but nonetheless, we believe, at least I didn't hear anything different, that people were issued new ballots if they had to get, so that they would have their right to vote. And so we think that night, at least it's been conveyed to the election board, that that process while had some issues, and every new issue does, we believe that process served its purpose and was done right. And so Ian tells us that the individual totals for every candidate in every precinct were in fact accurate. Do we know that? I guess it's like every election we ever had. When you hit total, what comes up, the total is the total. So they scanned them and they got the totals, and along with that they print tapes of each result, and one stays with the judge of elections or inspector of elections, another one comes to the election office. I think the third one is supposed to get posted at the precinct level. And that was done. And so when we got into the compilation down here on election night, at some point in time, they learned, when I say they, I mean both the election office and Dominion, they learned that some of the totals were not being added to the candidates' totals that were being distributed in those reports issued by the election office. And I agree with you on that, Bob. There we were all night issuing. I think it was after 4, after 11, after 21, after 26, after whatever the rest of them were. We were issuing a report that I'm now told by Dominion was inaccurate because it did not include the numbers that were not being picked up because of the addition of the two candidates that changed the dynamics of the technological world. So what happened, and I'm dismayed by this tremendously, is I was in conversation with the election office and Dominion's people on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, and was told that of what was going on, and we believed that any district recorded alphabetically after Lower Talmentsing Township was not properly adding the totals, because that's where the programming break from the first database to the second database took place, when they added the supervisor candidate in Lower Talmentsing. And from there on down, it impacted where numbers were going in this technological spreadsheet of some sort. So that would mean if a district came in alphabetically different than the L, if it was Summit Hill or Packer or whatever township, and that was recorded, it was not being recorded on the totals. That's the explanation that I accept. I'm not sure, I'm happy with the whole thing, but that's the explanation of what was happening. And so the totals that were coming out that night on those sheets, I'm told, were incorrect. However, I talked to a gentleman. In fact, in our executive session here, I even wrote down the time. It was like 11:02 on Tuesday night, and when I talked to Dominion, and I asked for the explanation and got it, and I said, now, is this going to impact any totals? And initially I was told that it would not impact the county totals, because he said the program was designed to calculate the totals of the statewide judge candidates, the county ones, and then going down in order the municipalities, and that the problem would not show. And if anybody got one of those sheets, you would see, like, maybe after, I'll say 26 precincts, if you page through that and look at the totals for a municipality outside of Lower Talmentsing, and the one I looked at was Nesquehoning, and there were like 800 votes in Nesquehoning, and the borough council candidates on that sheet were showing 0, and that in itself was alarming. And I think that probably lends credence to what they were saying, because any municipality above the letter L that was coming out on before, after 26 or whatever number precinct it is, had their proper totals. So that was the glitch that they say. However, when I asked Dominion if it would impact the county totals, I was told it would not. And then I was made aware of what they were going to do, and the process was this. They went to every precinct and got the tape from each of those 51 precincts that was returned by the judge of elections to our election office, and manually read off those totals and inputted them into the system to get new totals that Dominion says is accurate. Well, I'll tell you right now, when you're reading numbers and punching the numbers on a keyboard at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, there's a potential for a mistake. So I have reservations about that. Nonetheless, they tell us that in their experience, they think that the glitch having been removed and the numbers having all been entered by the tapes, that they believe the numbers that were reported at like 6:30 yesterday morning were the right ones. But it does leave a lot of questions. Well, Mr. Jacob says there, which I'm having a hard time with, is that I was told that it would not impact the county race, and yesterday morning I saw there were 10,000 more votes counted, and I saw you guys maybe had 4,000 or 5,000, and then I saw you had 6,000 or 7,000, and so it made me wonder what the hell's going on here. So I have those things, and I asked Dominion to come to today's meeting to do what I'm doing here, because this is difficult for me because I'm not smart enough to understand all this stuff, but they didn't want to do it, which tells me something in itself. And I told them that we put our trust in Dominion when we bought these machines from them, and when the pressure was on and our back was to the wall, they came up with options to remedy it, but didn't want to comment on it. So, having said that, let me tell you, change directions here. So here's what we had a meeting about. It's potentially litigation, so we had an executive session. But I'm told there are 5 options for the election board to decide on tomorrow. Incidentally, the session that we had here was the county administrator, the county solicitor, myself. The 2 election board members were participants by telephone. The Department of State was in, and an attorney for the Department of State was listening in, and also 2 representatives from Dominion and Lisa were the participants of that meeting. Here's what Dominion suggested. Number 1 option, they said, would be to bring in a high-speed scanner and scan all the ballots again and see what they show. It's also the same as option number 3 that they gave us, would be for us to scan them in our precincts with our own scanners, which would be slower and more tedious, but nonetheless it could be done. They contend that would verify the numbers that were reported on those tapes that were brought down here. Whether they are or not, I don't know, but that's what they say, that would be one way of verifying it, and it would result in a cumulative total that would also verify what they said was the accurate total on Wednesday morning. Number 2 is to load the election files into the original version, which did not have the 2 missing supervisors. And we could do that and see how it results, and they're confident that since that program was tested prior to the election, because we do have testing before the election takes place, and it worked before the election. However, we had to change then, and we had to change the program. And so they said we could load it into the original program. However, it would not count Lower Talmensing or Mahoning, and then we would have to manually load Lower Talmensing, Mahoning, which nonsense to me. It was crazy. It wasn't an option, but they said it was an option, so I'm telling you that. And then option number 4 would be to manually enter the data from the tapes into the system again to verify it in case there was a mistake made from midnight to 6 o'clock Wednesday morning when the process took place. And number 5 is a hand count audit, which is, in my mind, is exactly what this system was intended to do. That if we knew or thought or had a feeling of something not being right, what they said, why we went so-called back in time, was to have a paper trail. And we have a paper trail. So option number 5 is to commission or authorize or instruct the county. In this case, I know it would take more than our 2 election workers. We'd probably have to set up more, if that's the option we take, we'd have to get more workers to do it. But to hand count every ballot ourselves, to make sure. And so my 2 colleagues on the election board are aware of that, those options, and they'll be thinking about it like I will be. And tomorrow morning when we convene that meeting at 9 o'clock, we'll have this discussion and answer questions. I'll be happy to entertain questions from anyone, candidates, public, anyone at that time. And then we'll vote. We'll decide on what process we're going to do and see what we think the results would be based on what Dominion told us that they think it would verify it. They made it clear that they think everything worked at the precinct levels. And maybe they did. I don't know if they did or didn't, but they said that those tapes would verify, or what we would do, whatever option would verify what those tapes show. So we have that option of doing that. But I want to get it right. I'm telling you, I'm going to leave this chair in 2 years. 2 years. My wife's been.
You're going with me, Bill?
Listen, my wife's going to kill me when she hears that. In any event, on a serious note, I'm going to leave here in 2 months. And I want this right. And I know everybody in this room wants it right. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that there's a level of doubt or curiosity or skepticism that's out there. And I've heard, and believe me, I've heard from all of them. And I want to leave here knowing that we dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and validate it, and before the election board certifies these numbers to the state, which I'm sure will be in November, sometime later in November, that we're confident that we got it right. So I know that was long-winded. I think it begged for the problem or the situation begged for a full-scale explanation. I hope I did justice in explaining it as best I could. And we'll vote tomorrow on what we're going to do. But I think it's important that whatever way that vote goes, that we get it right so that we can move forward. Because there's a lot of work to be done here. And I'm not going to be here, but there's going to be a board sitting here, and I wish them well. And I'm not even talking about Commissioner's office, because there's other votes that I know in Mrs. Heaney's situation that was 100 votes. And like on election night, after 51 precincts, she trailed by 100. And then after 50 precincts, it was 100. And then after 51, it was 100. And we're looking at that saying, like, what the heck? How does that happen? And what I'm told is that when the numbers were loading in the precincts, and incidentally, the 51st district was Summit Hill, and that's after L. They said when the precincts were loaded, the numbers were going to different columns on this electronic or technological spreadsheet that they set up when they set up the program. But there was a question, and then 10,000 votes in the commissioner's race that weren't recorded on Tuesday night, that were recorded on Wednesday morning. And I can go on and on and on, and because I've seen a lot of things. I've looked at those sheets and the reports probably 100 times and didn't even sleep over, but we got to get it right. Make sure that the numbers are correct, the winners are who they are, and that we move forward and take Carbon County to the next level. So I'll shut up at that point.
Could I ask one quick question?
could ask him.
Should we go to, and I think this is a question that everyone sitting in here and everyone that voted, should we go the route, the fifth option here? How can we assure the voters and the candidates that whoever we pick to assist in counting those votes are not going to be
Well,
biased or
it's-
anything, and
You're right.
we want to be fair and make sure.
It-
If I could just say this, it is the only one way, and that is a complete independent audit that is separate from the election bureau.
Yeah,
Well,
and we'd
yeah.
have to determine the legality of that, Bob, only because the law says that the election board, the election office shall do
That's really,
the
yeah, I think
canvass.
what Commissioner O'Gorick is saying is correct. I mean, like he said, the Department of State, there were about 4 or 5 of them on the phone. They weren't questioning the integrity of the system, but obviously there were state offices on there, so they confirmed that it's up to the election board to determine how the canvass is going to take place. And again, the points at least I took away from that meeting with Dominion this morning was with the 51 machines, the results, they're confident that the tabulations on the individual machines are correct. I'm 2 steps behind you on technology, so they describe this as a tally system, I guess, where you then take the information from the individual machines, from the scanners, and enter them into the tally system, and that's where the glitch occurred in reading those results from the 51 machines. So it'll be up to the board, and that's their statutory duty now that they're going to meet and determine how the canvass is going to be made before the vote is certified.
Excuse me, Dan, commissioners, but we do know in the last election board meeting, the 2 election board members did admit to a conflict of interest. So therefore, again, I'm supporting Bob. If any recount or any type of recalculation is done, it must be done by an independent agency. That was admitted. You're more than welcome to look at the video that was done when 2 of the board members admitted they did have a conflict of interest. Thank you.
So Chris, let me just respond to that. If in fact that's possible, and if in fact the election board votes to do a manual hand audit,
Yeah.
I would be receptive to finding out if that's legal to do that type of audit. However, you know, if the election code tells us that we have to do it and we can't get someone outside, that if the onus is on us,
Right.
then it's going to be on us. But if it's not, and that's the option we're taking, I agree with you, and I agree with Bob, and I don't have any problem saying that, because I would want someone to make sure it's right without potential conflict. No question about it. We don't. Who wants to walk away from here and move forward and say, yeah, this is what they said is right, but, and I don't want to hear all those buts. That's crazy. I want it clear cut.
You know, I just want to take 1 minute to, first of all, thank Commissioner O'Gorick as the chairman of the election.
I'm being paid for doing that.
I mean, a lot of stress, but
I'm not doing it again.
and Bob, you know, closely contested races as yours and friends. We want to be fair to everyone. We want to make sure we get it right. So we're going to let that up. We're going to put our trust in Commissioner O'Gorick, and we'll see how it all plays out. But I want to be fair to everyone, especially, like I said, in closely contested races. We want to make sure we get it right. I think everything, you know, was supposed to be bulletproof, but unfortunately it wasn't. You know, a lot of holes in it right now, and we got to make sure we get it right.
Mr. Lukasevich, in your suggestion, you were saying an outside entity that would
I'm
do
just
that.
supporting, Commissioner, I'm just
Yeah,
supporting
well,
Bob's.
yeah, is that what you're
of course,
suggesting? But,
yeah.
you know, and if it legally can be done, you know, I would say to the election board, I think you have
Our
the
legal
authority.
counsel better be there tomorrow.
No, I'm
We'll
just
figure
saying
it out,
that
yeah.
if legally, if they can do it, I would say, hey, as far as the commissioner being concerned, if we have to pay somebody to do that audit, if we don't have time to come back with an RFP or anything like that, I think
Well, I think the board can make that
actually
decision.
do that.
The Board of
and I support that decision, whatever the board comes up with. If they need an auditor, do it.
You know, isn't it too much at stake for these elections to rely on people inputting data at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning? That don't make sense. After a long day that they were working all day long, they're working 20, 24 hours maybe, and then that's the data that we have. Although what Dominion is saying, they can do it again and verify it if we wanted to do that as an option. I'm not sure that's enough for me.
Well, I have a question, Bill.
Wait,
I'm
There
sorry,
was
Bob.
another one that was real close, the pathonetary's office with Joanne Behrens and Kayla Semmel. I think there was like 500 vote difference,
Yeah.
which was surprising as well.
Well, I think, Marion, what we would do is all the county
Oh, yeah.
races.
Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't stop
It'd be
on
all
one
of them.
race.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Tom? what were you gonna
I had a
say?
question. I know you said we have an option of bringing a high-speed scanner in to count, and then we could also hand count them. I'd be interested to see if the high-speed scanner, and then if we did that, and also hand counted them, if that number would be the same.
Exactly.
Well, again, we didn't talk today whether options 1 and 5 are
Yeah.
both doable, whether we could scan them and then say, well, this is what it showed,
Well,
but
that's-
let's look at them.
Those are both options
Yeah.
that are.
Yeah. One more question, if we may, on the election
I just
issue.
want to, if I can just end with this, I want to make sure. This is about numbers, it's true, but this is also about a process.
Yeah.
And so where my head goes, and where my head went originally was, to be honest, less about what my number was, although it was nice to see that it's decreased, from 900 down to 243. But it really is about this process, and so if we don't get it right now, think about next year. In the 2020, I mean, it's going to be a disaster for us.
You know, Bob, you're 100% right. And since Tuesday, I've been saying to myself, I wish we hadn't used these new machines. And you know what? Because that would be easy for me to walk away from it and say that's not my problem. But next year, when we have 4 times the number of voters in a presidential election, we're going to have 4 times the number of complaints and problems, and all this stuff would have surfaced its ugly head at some point in time. So I am kind of glad that we're trying to get this ironed out so that it doesn't happen again.
Well, another fine example when federal government and state government say, you must do it, and you must do it now, and you can't get machines certified. We went through it 10 years ago. Some of those machines were never certified to my knowledge, or got to it, and it just crammed it down your throat, and you need it done now. It doesn't give people enough time to make sure everything is working properly.
And I'm going to close. I know this is getting long, but I
Yeah.
want to say this about these machines. I had a discussion with one of our rovers, who is also the technological guy at the Times News, and he's very, very smart. And that's your husband, by the way. In any event, here's what he told me. I said, well, what's your understanding, or what did you see in roving, and because I wanted to know how it went. And he said, in my mind, it was great. And he said, yeah, papers bled and stuff, but it had no impact because it doesn't pick up ovals on the reverse side, so you need to know that. But he said, here's the deal. He was in charge of maybe 15 precincts, whatever the number is, and he said, I used to be in charge of 15 precincts, which used to be 45 to 60 machines, which used to be about 150 to 180 cards that they put in the machine, which lended to all different kinds of possibilities of things going wrong. He said, and on Tuesday, I was in charge of 15 scanners. So while it's problematic and it seems like backwards, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's something good. Yeah, it was we had problems with it, but maybe it's something good going forward, that no minor problem like a Sharpie bleeding through a paper, or a scanner bent, not taking a paper because it was bent. Maybe that's not all that important going forward. So we'll see, but we got to deal with this issue, and we will.
And anything, one more before we have to order
Andrew
pizza?
Roberts from Jim Thorpe. The only comment I would say is it looked like some of the slips didn't make it to the front of the precinct, so I know the Marion did have theirs taped to the front of the door, but not everyone was doing that, and so at some point somebody should just make sure all the precincts.
Yeah, and that was a complaint, and
Great.
I could tell you, we have no responsibility that we had to post them up there.
Okay.
Again, it's what we've been doing all the time is posting results on the precinct. I know what they did in Summit Hill because I was up there at the time, and my brother's the judge of elections, and I said, well, people want to know. And so he took a sample ballot and corresponded the numbers from the slip onto the sample ballot and posted the sample ballot up there. And maybe that's what I'll recommend to Lisa to do, or to recommend that the judges of elections, because I know we're creatures of habit, and people always want to see it. And I know that it didn't happen. They showed me these sheets that were going to go up there, and they identified, I think, candidates or offices by numbers instead of by persons. And I said, well, that's not good. You put that up there, people are gonna say, what the heck is this? So we put up a sample ballot, told I didn't do it, my brother told me he was gonna do it. And then I got a field of complaint here yesterday morning, why won't those results up there in this precinct or that precinct? That's really trivial compared to the stuff that I was dealing with in the last day, but it is what it is.
Okay.
But that's a good recommendation. We have,
Yeah,
if we're gonna
definitely.
make that available to people, I think we gotta train our judges to post them so that
Maybe
they
the
have.
next election board will ensure that
Yeah.
we come up with some kind of form.
You're
or
gonna be on
something.
that, aren't you?
Well, unless the numbers change.